Hello, this is Warweasel again. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different than our typical, uh, but I am still going to start off by showing what I've accomplished recently. Um, Here, let's just jump to it. I've been working with my lock-on system and various targets, and as is the case with most code, it takes 1 day to figure it out and 2 days to clean it up. But right now, I have a lock-on system, and if you notice that no matter where I am, his head turns, even if I'm not running directly at him, his head turns to look at the target, and that's how I'm going to show what my target is. Yeah. So these are working. Putting together a health system so that I can work with these guys and actually take damage, not stagger all the time. Trying to start the choreographed animation, but that just doesn't seem to be working yet. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong yet. I'm sure it's something simple. Here's some information. Let me pop this up. Maybe you can see it better. But if you look up in the top corner here, you can see my target, enemy number 1, and my stance and my rotation mode is now target direction. If I move around, it goes to velocity direction, even if he is not, even if he has a target sometimes. But that's when he just looks at the other, looks at the target. And my whole idea is that I am trying to make things a lot more, well, easier for the player to control. Unfortunately, there's always a little bit of control I have to take away from the player in order to line up the character directly. There's nothing worse than missing a punch by a hair's breadth when in reality a human being could have made that couple centimeters modification. All right, well, that's what I have right now. Of course, everything else still seems to be working, so that's good. I'm always afraid that I'm going to break other things. There we go. All right, and that's about enough of that. Okay. I know a lot of people are looking at Unreal Engine and all the news lately and saying, wow, I could get into game dev and I could make this amazing game and I could make a lot of money, or I could at least make a living at it. Some of these people coming in don't have any background in any of the relevant skills. They're neither artist, musician, software, nothing like that. And so they are going to have to pick up all of the myriad skills that are required. What I wanted to do was to kind of explain how I've come to game development, and maybe this will help temper people's expectations. Because my first game development stuff, we'll get to this later, is actually on YouTube as soon as it decides to come up. And it's really my own game engine. And it's kind of terrible. It's and I don't have internet. Oh, excellent. Well, I don't have any of them with me, but they are just spheres and cylinders moving around barely. And I did all that in Lisp. But I got a firm understanding uh, of graphics development while I was learning that. I learned what shaders are. I learned some basics of how a physics engine works. Um, I, I already was a software developer, but it really pushed my skills to the next level in order to architect such a large structure and keep things from breaking. Now, I wasn't super successful at that. Things broke a lot, as you can see from my videos. But that's what I started before I decided I was going to learn Unreal Engine. And I went in and I decided I was going to learn both Unreal and Unity. And I didn't care for Unity because I don't like C#. I prefer C++. And so I chose Unreal. And I think that's a good enough reason. Now, what does it mean to learn Unreal Engine? Well, everybody wants to say, well, Unreal is a game engine. Well, that's technically true, but that's like saying, a car is a vehicle. It could be anything from, the Batmobile to a Buick. It, it, what kind of engine is it? Well, it is a very advanced database that takes all the assets, and yes, even your code and your software are assets, and pulls them together into a real-time experience. I guess it doesn't technically have to be real-time, but, most people, if they're using a game engine, are using the real-time aspects of it. Now, how many parts are in this database, this system that you have to learn? Well, there are a few. Let's just start with actors. Actors are, well, pretty much anything that you put in the scene is an actor. So let's take a look at this. We'll take a look at a table. Can't get much simpler than a table, right? And this actor has many pieces. Let's see, where's the collision? Yep. Yes, there's the collision information. You can see the cube here, so there's some collision. There's the mesh itself, SM table. This is actually just a collection of triangles with the material on top of it. Some physics, and this isn't too bad, but it's still a very, very complex system. This could be an editor. This could be a separate tool entirely. Very, 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 very simple. So let's do something a little bit more complex. Let's try this. How about this one? Well, edit this, bring it up. This has objects in it. It has collision. It has some visual points that I'm using for other things. And it also has code in it. Now this code doesn't look like normal code, but believe me, it's very powerful. And it's code in its own right, an object-oriented system. And if you like aspect-oriented, you will like Unreal. But I have a lot of functions that have just come up. Set is in hand, get IK location, and tons of information. Let's jump to a character. A character is one of the most complex things. A player character is extremely complex. This is all the stuff that's the various components that make up my character. If we look at the character himself, here he is. You can see all the different pieces from the camera to a camera boom, spring arm, to his collision, to another collision volume that's for melee, and my various components from interaction to weapons to physical animation, and lots and lots and lots of code. The majority of this coming from the advanced locomotion system. So here's a one part of that is the mesh. So let's look at the mesh. That's the actual character looking thing. Here we have an animation class. So that's an animation blueprint, which has, events. Here's the event graph. That's all the events that can happen. Here's the animation graph. This is what all that has to be done in order to create the final pose from moment to moment. And there's lots of little pieces in here. I have my main state machines. That state machine has a state machine in it. There's another state machine in that. More state machines. And, it's turtles all the way down. Again, it also has lots and lots of code. From here, we have components, which are pieces that go, oh my poor doggy. All right. So, different pieces, like my weapon component, or probably my interaction component is the most complex. This lets me plug in functionality to a character. I have it across my two different types of characters, my player character and my NPCs. And you have to know the difference between them. You really don't want to have all that overhead for a NPC on a player character. All right. Well, what else do we have? Well, we have animations. Animations are, that seems fairly straightforward. That's just an art asset. But here, we can have things like anim curves. And this allows me to control the IK. So the higher it is, the more it's going to grab at a position rather than just use the resting position at the animation. And there are notifications. So here's item in hand notification. When I stop, I come in here. There. That's when the item is in the guy's hand. And it transfers from the table or wherever it is into his hand. And then in here, I have an inventory notification. They're up here. Add to inventory or remove, right hand, left hand. It's just an event that gets fired. And then I finally have my interaction notify, and that tells me that it's over. So that I can leave a little bit early if the player wants to. Or I can continue the animation to the end, which is a little bit. We can look further in here. We can look at the mesh. It's the character. He's made of bones. Like, you can literally move the bones around if you want to see how this works. Play around with him, create a pose. You can look at the skeleton, which can be separate from the mesh. So you can share a skeleton. Like I said, I have a blueprint for this, and there are also physics that are involved. If you want to do ragdoll, that's, it's difficult to do. So here's one of my notification objects. When I'm about to hit or kick something, I have to tell it to start detecting collisions. So I have to understand the physics. HUDs, so GUI widgets, need to be understood. And that doesn't even begin to cover it, really. We have various modes. We have lights. We have cinematics. We have geometries. We have, volumes. I have all the other tools. I have brushes and different pieces like that. The output log. Oh, that looks horrible. Um, there are structures. You need to understand what a structure is, which is a compound data type. Miscellaneous things that you don't really care about right now, but you need to know they're there if you want to do a camera shake. What is an interface? When do you use those? Uh, you know, what's an enum? What's an enumeration? Why is that important? And then you have your own defined data types. In this case, these are my combos, input commands that let me do my melee attacks. And then you have each of these. And these are different packs that I've either bought or gotten free from the Unreal store. Now let me bring this down. And as the story goes, I told you all that so I could tell you this. So let's jump to this. This is the close combat asset pack. No, there's no sound. That's just the way it is. You know, this is something I bought because I wanted to learn how it worked. Now, is it perfect? No. And is it ready for a game? It is not ready for any game at all. Okay? This is, you could almost think of it as a tech demo, maybe. Yeah, I don't even know how to play this thing yet. I mean, it's fun and it looks good. There you go. And I've learned a lot from going through the code and looking at it. He also has another one that's you know, the character interaction. That does have sound. And I have learned a ton from going through this code and looking at his assets and how he has everything set up. Let's jump. Here's the glass pack, because I just think shooting glass is a blast, so I decided to go ahead and get this. And nope, still don't have it working with my game, mostly because it's not a huge priority. But again, it's going to take time for me to figure out how to use it, etc. It's still a lot of fun, though. All right, what's next? The first-person story adventure. This was free a while back. Very basic game. If you wanted to do something like Gone Home, this would be a good place to start. You know, there's a lot to it, but you know, you have collectible objects, things you can look at, looking around at things. And the reason why I'm showing you all this is because these are just pieces. And they're not... You go out, you're going to buy this pack for, you know, $100 maybe. $200 for a more expensive one. And a lot of people think that that's going to allow them to create the game of their dreams. It's not. It's hardly even a starting point. It's a tutorial. You can use pieces of it, but you're going to have to break it apart and put it back together. If you're working alone, or even if you're working as part of a team, you are going to have to understand every single piece of code. At some point, you will have to look at it make sure it's what you need, and understand what it's doing. I promise you that. There were parts of the game that I thought I would not have to look at, but that just didn't happen. And I've had to look at every piece, pretty much take out every bit of code that I wanted, dust it off, sometimes remake it, but put it where I wanted it to go. And that takes time, a lot of time, and it requires actual coding skill. Understanding pieces of code, understanding what variables are, understanding that you can't just plug in some new animations in an existing engine and get a completely new feel. All right, there's a word for that. It's called a reskin. Okay, and nobody likes those because they're never good. You know, at best, they're a sophomoric understanding of the original. Maybe the assets might be better, but usually not. Usually they're just bought and are hit or miss as well. On top of that, you have things like, if you're a single developer, you have to learn how to model and animate, how to texture, how to create the characters. You have to learn to do art. This is a real thing that happens. Yes, I made this, and I'm as surprised as you. Some other nice skills to have is that if you are making games or you're doing this kind of work, you really should learn some kind of source code repository system. I prefer Git. I highly recommend Git. You're not going to go wrong learning Git, G-I-T. But you need to be able to track your changes and be able to revert in case you make a mistake, even in a one-man team. On top of that, I highly recommend a tool like GitLab, which lets you look at your code online, see your check-ins. I can take a look at my activity. I don't use that very much. But what I do look at are my issue boards. You know, I have issues. I have various boards and milestones. Here's my current one, and I'm 52% done. These are the things I need to add. Stagger mechanic, dodges. Do I want to target to start physical animation when there are mesh or capsule collides? I could probably close that now. Just all sorts of, anything I can think of. On top of that, there's a wiki. So I can put my elevator pitch in here so I don't forget it, because I will forget things. I have a lot of information about my combat system. You know, I have a working document. That just used to be everything. All of this runs on a virtual Linux machine out in the ether, so I had to learn how to set up a Linux machine. Luckily, I already knew how to do that. But I have this running on Linode, and I can, look at this, do backups, check status. And this is, I spend about $15 a month on this in order to host and secure my code, because I put a lot of work and effort into it. Finally, me jumping here, you're going to need to learn some basic administration skills to make sure that you, DF.H. I have, 8 gigs of about 25 gigs for my Git server, so I'm using about 36%. And I need to update things on a regular basis, keep them working. This is where my email server is, etc. I know this has been a long, long video, so if you've stuck with me this entire time, this is where the inspiration comes from, okay? Because I figured out how to do it. I really have. And frankly, it came from Girl Genius. Game development is mad science. It really is. There is science to it, but nobody really knows what they're doing. You put together a couple characters, you move them around, and you say, is this fun? Yes, no. If it's not fun, you make it fun. If it is fun, you say, can this be more fun? And if it can be, you try to do that. And it's just constant tweaking, constantly adding little pieces and bits until you have something fun like a spork gun. Um, you know, what I have to do is I have to let myself become so passionate about my own game that I go to the madness place. And the madness place is where I can't not do something. I have to work on it. I'm excited. I have the energy. And I don't care whether it's, a mountain stands between me and my goal. I can find a way to get there because I'm not thinking about getting there. I'm just doing the work. And I've had to take a lot of time to learn all these different tools. Um, I have Unreal, I have Blender, I've learned some GIMP, I've learned some drawing, Character Creator, Marvelous Designer, Substance Painter, Substance Designer. And I've taken all of that time that I used to dedicate to playing games and dedicated it to making my own game. So when you see something like this, you don't see the hours that go into it. Obviously, you're going to run through a room. You don't notice that there's a lock-on system, but you notice when it's not there. You notice when the AI is really stupid, but you also notice when the AI is too smart. It's, like I said, constantly tweaking. And my understanding of the systems and the various tools have all come from each, just me hurling myself at this impenetrable wall and making a dent. And that is what I think it takes. This is not a sane pursuit. If I wanted to make big money, there are other places to do it much more easily. Game development is something you have to love. And if you're looking at it thinking, oh yeah, I'll just put in, a year of work, or a month of work, I'll kick out a game, put it on Steam, make my millions, and buy a Cayman Island. That's not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen if you put in 10 years and work hard. You might get a job at a game development company, but getting a hit is very rare, and getting rich is even more rare. And truly the best way to get rich is to be born rich. And if that's the first time you ever heard that, then I am truly sorry. So yeah, what is my secret sauce? Insanity. But anyway, I'm going to keep punching this shark as long as I can get away with it. And I hope you have a good weekend.